Good afternoon. It's Joyful Christian Hermit. Well, I've been listening. I haven't really heard a lot other than just little things like perk up, uh, put on a different color sweater, blue for the Virgin Mary. I decided would be good. That's what came to mind. This sweater, I think it's 20 years old or more, but it's if we take care of our stuff, it they hold up for a long, long time. This is I think it's solid cotton, 100% cotton. So it wears well and it's warm. And I wear a little inexpensive thermal thing underneath. So then I noticed just how really I had aged. I've aged. This sickness really did it. And I dug around in some boxes. I haven't unpacked the bathroom stuff, and I found stuff to try to oil my skin some. I have an aunt who's going to be 102 in about 4 months. Yeah, less than 4 months. And oh my goodness, she's outstanding. But she would oil her skin every night. I mean, it's always like greasy. So and in the day it always looked, but of course that's not my priority. But that's what I heard was perk up. Do the best with what you've got left, even in the tangibles. I was concerned about my presentation. I'd prayed to do a better job of anything that would be worthwhile for you, to share with others that would be helpful and worthwhile for our spiritual lives and our temporal lives, both. They all go together. And that came to mind, is do what I can with what I've got left on the external, so I'm not too drastic of a distraction. Of course, I could move the laptop off, but this, I like picture you guys out there. And so it sort of helps that I sort of see you out there, even though you're not there. But every person, I have an image of what you look like. People who leave comments sort of feel like I get to know you. And then I remember more to pray and all of that. But so I made this minor change. And I'd given most of my jewelry to my granddaughters and one of my daughters, the daughter that I think she liked the things I gave her, these little stud earring type things. The other daughter has her own particular taste, but I had these little studs left and one ear skinned, grown over, but I redid it. Pain doesn't get to me too much. So that's an advantage. If you have enough body pain for 40 and a half years, piercing your own ear doesn't get to you. Minor. Anyway, little touch of humor there. But I haven't had any big messages of what God wants of me in whatever time I have left. I'm doing better again today. I've been up more. And the dogs were restless. They wanted to go out several times. So I put them in their crates with a treat. Just tied them over. It's not really supper time yet for them, but they think, Mercy's in charge of that. She covers the routine, and we've had a more gray day, so it looks darker earlier for her. But I thought, no, I found this. This was a sermon, actually an exegesis, a study, a scriptural study of Job by St. Gregory the Great, Pope St. Gregory the Great, 8th century, early 9th. So latter part of the 8th and the early part of the 9th. I think I've got that right. So it's focused on Job 15:35. They conceive woe and bring forth iniquity, and their womb prepareth deceit. It's an older translation. But basically it says, that which comes out of man's heart is what renders him impure, unpure. So it's a scripture, where also in the gospel Jesus is talking about, it's not what is, it's what comes out of us that can be deadly, bad. The externals are one thing, but if we have ugliness or sickness within us, that can be really deadly for our souls. So this is what he wrote, Pope St. Gregory the Great. For he conceives woe when he devises wicked things. He brings forth iniquity when he has begun to fulfill what he has devised. By entertaining envy, he conceives woe by uttering slanders. And he brings forth iniquity then, sin, when we slander others. And envy's a terrible sin because it conceives woe. Envy will make us unhappy, because we'll always be wishing that we were like that person or better, or win if we'd only won, or what can we do to win at any price, because that's all that matters, is winning, winning, winning in some sport or in a academic contest, or even in our own minds over other people. Who's going to be more popular, who's going to be considered better by who? I don't know. But the envy isn't logical. Envy becomes a sickness. And then pretty soon, slander is being said. Nasty things about this or that person. Or vicious vengeance is figured out. How can I get that person out of the way so that I can be number one? That's envy. Envy is very cunning. It's usually not so outward like that, but that's the bottom line of it, and the top line. It's a nasty disorder. It's a nasty thing. And it brings forth sin then. Envy can cause other people then to join in, get other people going. And then other people find out, what you're doing, and the ugliness spreads. It just gets ugly. So he says, for it is grievous wickedness when he who is wicked strives to make others appear wicked, that he may himself thereby appear as holy, because he has shown that others are not holy. To have sort of one-upsmanship. If I can just put this other person down, set it up so that they look like they're not right in what they say or what they write or talk about, then I'll look right. See, that's the whole thing, how it gets going, how wickedness gets going to make other people seem bad, but us seem great. But we ought to bear in mind that in Holy Writ, by the title of the belly or the womb, the mind is used to be understood. Hence it is that is said by Solomon, for the candle of the Lord is the breathway of man, searching all the inward parts of the belly. That comes from Proverbs 20:27. For the light of grace, which comes from above, affords a breathway to man unto life, which same light is said to search all the inward parts of the belly, in that it penetrates all the secrets of the heart, that the things which were hidden from the soul, touching itself, it may bring back before the eyes thereof with weeping. So to sort of digest that was a very long sentence there. For the light of grace, which comes from above, affords a breathway to man unto life, sort of like an ability to breathe an opening, to get an opening into a thought. It's like a light, they say here. A light said to search all the inward parts of the belly. You know, way back when they felt that the heart was in the belly, that was the center of us. And in a way it is, it just depends on perspective. But this light then searches the inward parts of the belly or the soul, the heart, in that it penetrates all the secrets of the heart, that the things which were hidden from the soul, touching itself, it may bring back before the eyes thereof with weeping. What's revealed to us in our gut, in our very center, or in someone else's center, can be upsetting, can cause us to cry for what we see. Deception, or corruption, or sin, or envy, or any number of the vices. And of course, we can also see the virtues. But this is Job. Hence Jeremiah saith, my bowels, I am pained. That's Jeremiah 4:19. Who, that he might show what he had called his belly, added the senses of my heart are troubled. So by the title of the womb, the gut, the belly, what births forth new life, the mind is rightly understood, in that like as the offspring is conceived in the womb, so is thought engendered in the mind. So this we dissect this a little bit more, that offspring is conceived in the womb. We all understand that. Babies are conceived in the womb and grow in the womb. New life comes forth. A new human being is born from the womb. It's offspring. And that is like what we can see that is good, that comes out into life, is birthed into the world. Goodness, out of the womb. And thought, though, offspring, the womb, the mind is rightly understood like the offspring conceived in the womb. But also thought is engendered in the mind. So it's sort of good to ponder that. Where is the center of our soul, and what do we birth from it? What do we cause to grow in us, in our guts, in our hearts? What grows there? And then what kind of thoughts grow in our minds? There's they're talking two locations here: the womb, the belly, which holds life in it, and then gives birth to life, which is astounding. It's great. Action, life, action, healthy action. But the mind is also needed because thought is engendered in the mind. Thought is birthed in the mind, and thought grows in the mind, and thought comes out of the mind. For what was gestational in the womb, in the belly, and is birthed as life, as action, the thought then can join with the action. And that's how we have great things happen, wonderful things. But if it's not good, that's coming out of the heart, if it's impure, and what's coming out of the mind, if either one of those is hindered in any way, darkened, or sick, a sickened body by vices, or like sloth, just being lazy even, not wanting to do anything, or having what comes out of our inner gut, our just being out of the womb, being disturbed, disordered in any way, like personality disorders. Then what comes out of the thought, out of the mind, can't find any purity of fruition with a disordered body, disordered life, or a sinful life. And you're going to have disordered thoughts and sinful thoughts come out of the mind that no matter how great the gut, the what was birthed from the heart or the gut, the belly, it's not going to succeed. It's going to be always hindered. So both has to be pure and good and vital. And that involves a lot of factors. It involves environment and genetics, heredity, and choices. Our own choices and how we, what we are made of, what we choose to put into our minds and into our bodies and our hearts, our emotions and what goes into our mind with our will, that's the soul. So it's a conjoint mission. And if we're not pure in some way, if we're unhealthy in some way, it will affect the other, or at least cause the other to be handicapped, disabled, crippled, which makes us less effective then in some ways. In totality, it limits us. But God can overcome the limitations, but it does require us, our cooperation. So I was thinking, I discovered, this is back to pickleball situation. This player who has increasingly become unhealthy with desperation to win at any cost. But it probably hasn't been all that recent, but it's coming out more and more. Other players know it, and some of the viewers are noticing this situation, this person. And the person itself, I'll just say itself, I'm not going to give a gender, has the ego has so gotten, the narcissism has gotten so prominent that if the person doesn't do well in even just one event or one game, doesn't win, freaks out, has started, always has some different excuse or reason for it. I've been fighting a mysterious illness, or I've not been well. Now it's mental health. Is talking about mental health, wrote an essay on mental health, tried to get of course, mentioning, all these people are caused me this or that, or the stress of this person doing this or that caused me not to do well. And that's why I lost, But no excuses, says that, but it's all very calculated, and the person's doing very, very well. Great, being promoted and sponsors, but there's not a joy there. There's not a naturalness to it. And people are gradually knowing about this person, and that there's a sickness going on. But it's not mental health. Mental illness is not the same as personality disorders. Personality disorders are sometimes part heredity. A lot is environmental, can start in childhood, if not corrected, if not stopped. And it's a lot of choice, of the person's choice. And the more whatever category of personality disorder gets going, the worse it gets, and the sicker the person is. So it's not, mental illness is a lot heredity. And there's medications for it, for mental illness, personality disorder. Not really any medication too much that will take it away. Lots of therapy, and many of them, the person needs to be in therapy the rest of their lives. Problem is they don't recognize by that time that they are sick, that it is within them, and that they have to do behavioral and personality changes, conversions. But usually by the time it becomes very destructive for themselves and for others, people don't like the person, don't want to be involved, of course have to be, usually if they're in your workplace or in your family, or you're married to one, it's tough, or your parent has a personality disorder. Many of them, is said, really the only way for other people is to get away from them. That's about all you can do, is to get away, far away. So I've had experience with that, and I didn't even recognize how sick the person was I was with. Not a mental illness. So I said, I've got this wonderful spiritual friend and good friend, very intelligent, heredity, severe paranoid schizophrenia. So severe, had to have series of brain shocks about 12 to 13 years ago. One of them, she nearly died during the procedure. It was terrible. They're horrific. But they had tried everything, and that was all that finally helped. And then, of course, this strong medication, just to be on that for life, and has to get it checked every so often, and blood checks, and make sure it's at an adequate level. A couple of years ago, it was slipped, the level somehow slipped, and she ended up in a crisis point, thankfully saved just in the nick of time, but totally not her fault at all. You know, husband had been making sure she had her medications, but they needed to be adjusted. They didn't realize her body chemistry or something had changed. It was scary, but thank God he got there in time. So, and she's brilliant. She's the most devout person I know, holy, and in a humble way, and meaningful devout, not just routine. She's plugged in, and she has a routine very routinized. The shock treatments did a lot to her brain. Chunks of memory are gone, and she's a very routinized person as a result. Schedule and but her husband, he has her on a schedule. You know, they go to the grocery just about every day, and cook meals together, do a lot of these things, have guests over, and he has friends and that she enjoys also. For her part, she has friends, and she has a good, she's a ministry person to a handicapped woman who's mentally handicapped, not mental illness, just mentally handicapped, maybe from birth or something, older woman, and keeps in touch with her and checks on her, and she's living a holy life. I'm just so impressed. But none of it was, any of that was by choice as far as her illness. It was hereditary. Her niece has it even worse. Or it came sooner, I should say, worse sooner. So the niece never married and is dealing with this. Medicate, same thing. And has to be watched carefully in case something goes wrong with the medication. So that's entirely different than personality disorders. That is mental health. And of course, personality disorders can be affected by environment very easily, and others, and stress, and etc. But it's not the same. A clinical depression, clinical anxiety disorder, that's mental health. People tend to be born with those things, or something in their environment happened so profoundly when they were young, or at some other juncture point in life, that they broke. And that's mental health. But there's medications for them, and therapy too if they need, but usually they eventually work through understanding what happened and why they have the anxiety or why they have the depression that's clinical, that they have to live with, and medicate for it and accept that and understand their life can be altered because of that. Like my friend with the schizophrenia, it's all under control, strong medications, but it altered her personality in certain ways, not much, but I'd say, like I said, has to have more routine. That's natural for her now, and just very disciplined. I admire her so much, and her husband and her family. But she doesn't have the typical friendships. most people maybe don't understand that, or, want more spontaneity, or that someone like me, I'm grateful she's my friend because I don't have, with my pain, I can't go and do and all of that. So it's been a great alliance, the friendship with her. But it was not by any choice on her part, or any, we should say, fault or vice. So, might be my neighbor. I might have to stop, but I want to go over a personality disorder that I find fascinating, and it's what this person has that I was mentioning, who increasingly makes choices, though, but by this point in life is full into a psychopath, psychopathy. And it's different than sociopath. I didn't realize, actually, sociopaths really have a high tendency to a predisposition to violence. So I have to correct. I think I'll talk it over with Dr. H, because he knows he's met my former husband, but not that it matters now. I don't have interaction with him, except if he does something regarding one of the adult kids or grandkid, then that can, his disorder, personality disorders can be the reason, come to light. But that had to have been choices in childhood on up, especially junior high school age. Choices to lie. For sociopaths, like to leave clues. It's a game, all they can get away with. But psychopaths are different. Similar, but different. Guess I have time. Their violence can be varied, but it's not like a sociopath. And a sociopath is more tendency to more violence, actually. But you hear about psychopaths who murder someone, and that can happen, but often it can happen from some other reason than being a psychopath. But it's gotten that reputation, I think, from these thriller movies, where they will have some psychopath who's a serial killer or something. But no, actually, it's not that prevalent. The violence can be very varied as far as what they do, the type of violence. Like I read recently about a high school girl who was so envious and so a little psychopath. She had gotten into this 4-H and was so into it, she killed this other girl's little baby goat, show goat. Killed it herself. She was caught on camera. She's going to do jail time. She needs help. She's going to need mental help because she's unfortunately in this disorder, in the path of it. But when you get older, then it's really bad. And it gets, with psychopaths, it gets even more cunning and more masked. Person gets very good at it. And they get to the point, though, they don't recognize it's just their way of life. But they become driven. And the more they have to drive, and the more to keep going, to feed their egos, their narcissism, they have very controlled behavior, very disciplined and in control, and they can be very, very successful, highly successful. They have a tendency to participate in schemes. Sometimes they'll involve someone else in their schemes. or just their own. And they like that. They'll scheme in order to promote themselves or get what they want. If it's like in a sport, it's to get what they want, to get the adoration, to get the win, to get the attention, all that goes with it. And they do it, though, no matter what. They'll take calculated risks to minimize evidence or exposure. So this is the one who I'd mentioned, had planned and plotted and connived to do another person in, to make it impossible practically for that person to get quality partners for at least a year. And it turned out longer than. So little things like that, and behind the back things. And then didn't say till the last possible minute, possible day, that. So, they're very, and it can be even more so than that, but they sort of get off on these calculated risks and the scheming. And how clever can they be? Because see, that just feeds their ego all the more. But they don't necessarily realize, at a certain point, they don't realize they're doing any of it. It becomes habitual. It's a disorder. It becomes part of their personality. And these things can start young. Grade school, junior high, and really get into it in high school. And those are ages like high school where kids are all up and down anyway. A lot of people don't recognize it. It's hard to recognize because they're very cunning and charming. See, they have a tendency for premeditated crimes, and the crimes don't have to be illegal crimes, but taking advantage or doing wrong. It's wrong. Taking advantage of others, manipulating. They're very manipulative. As I mentioned, controllable risks, opportunism. If the opportunity's there, they'll take it, or they'll create an opportunity. Fraud, and calculated or opportunistic violence, if it comes down to it. That's why the delight in this ultra-aggressive play, style of playing, has become all the type they play, this one. In social relationships may appear superficially normal in social relationships, but has no real attachments. The person will, they're often, no attachments. They don't have empathy or conscience. They've lost the conscience. So it doesn't register that they're doing anything wrong. It's always everybody else is doing wrong. If they don't succeed, or if they're not glorified, not given the attention they think they deserve, it's always because of someone else, or there's some sickness, or they weren't feeling well, or now this mental health thing, which isn't too smart to use mental health as a reason, even if you want to blame others that they're causing your mental health, because personality, it's not a mental health thing. It's psychological. It's a deviancy. It's a disorder. And it's partly was choice at certain points in their development. It was choosing to do wrong. Whereas people with mental health, with mental illness, they're not choosing that. In fact, they don't want it. They're persecuted in many ways. People don't understand. There's a fear of people with mental illness in some circles. Harder to have a social life, more uncomfortable. Just the routinized ways, or however they have to adapt, the medications they're on. Like my friend who's lost chunks of her memory, and so it's two different things here. So they don't have empathy, they don't have conscience. They're often social predators. They want to take advantage of other people. They may hurt family and friends without feeling guilt, like the backstabbing. She kept saying she was their best friend. So, values relationships that benefit themselves. So, that's psychopath. And I didn't realize there's so much more on it. You can read and understand better someone with that personality disorder. And it's sad. It really is. But it's hard in a way to feel bad. And that's sad. We can't get to that point, though. We can't. We have to have understanding of a personality that's like that. Sociopaths, it's different than psychopath. Trying to see if there's anything that's really hugely different. A sociopath can empathize with very close friends or family, whereas a psychopath won't. They'll act like they are, but it's all them. And sociopaths will feel guilt if they hurt people close to them. See, that's where I realized I had my former slightly, I'm going to talk it over with Dr. H, but I think it's more psychopath, because there was never compassion. I've mentioned how I had that miscarriage and fainted and fell headfirst into the shower, and I was yelled at. Well, look what you've done now. I asked, please help me, lift me up. I had a concussion, I had a broken nose, and this poor nose has been broken a few times. But, it's a strange thing if you're married to someone like that. And then you realize it comes to a point where it gets dangerous. You've got to get away. In some cases, it gets dangerous. In mine, it was getting that way. If they can't control, if they can't win in their minds. It doesn't have to be a sport thing. I use that as an example. It could be in any kind of a relationship. And you have to know, though, that you don't know that it's just superficial to that person. The vows don't mean anything. It's just a grand scheme of how grandiose they can make themselves, because the psychopath has loads of narcissism in them. Lots of narcissism. And often underneath, of course, they have this insecurity that's like an empty well, or it feels like they can't get it filled enough. So they use other people. That's where the scheming comes in whatever ways. And that's how they can easily become criminal if they don't get feeding their ego and all their needs through a more outwardly legitimate form. So I would think sports probably has psychopaths in it in other, like boxing or football or anything like that, because they do like a more violent, aggressive thing that appeals. So I just found it very fascinating, and it sort of was sparked by when I did the research on it. I had sort of stopped thinking about that one situation, but my own marriage, it's never too far. It can easily get triggered by little things that happen. Like my crooked nose, I'll think of that. Or, oh, well, it can be just being very sick and realizing, well, if I had a husband, it would be easier. Just even in sort of greedy things on my part, selfish things of how it would have been easier getting through this if my husband were with me. A husband, a good husband, not a sick, it's a psychological sickness. Personality disorders are. And it is distinctive that there's usually there's medication to keep them toned down. Once they get to the point where they flip out if they don't get their way, or they start to become violent, if they scream at a ref or something, or if they are crossed, or if they don't win and don't find someone they can blame, or write something publicly that people can read and they'll feel vindicated then. That, mental health is real, And that, I'm surprised, if anyone, would push that with themselves, and they have children or anything, someone could come along and call CPS, Child Protective Services, out of concern for the children. If the person keeps saying they've got all these mental health things going on, are the children okay? Well, with a personality disorder parent, they're not really, because that lends to the environment. And they mostly pick these things up from environment. Some of them have some hereditary strings attached, but not that much and not that many. And so it's a lot of environment and being exposed to those types of behavior, the manipulation, the scheming, the doing anything to get their plan to work and to succeed and to feed their what becomes really out of control ego needs, narcissism, lying, and planning things out, and then developing a team around them, not a team, but a network of people who are either being paid by the person on staff or in the family, who don't want the family to break apart. So they start enabling or ignore or take the abuse of the person's disorder. It can get very uncomfortable, and it can get scary. I know, I've experienced it. And you start losing your own self because they scheme and control the people around them then through their sick psychology. So all this, what comes out of our minds and our hearts. The scripture actually says, that the man's heart is what renders him impure. And you're talking about the womb, which, as I said before, they used to feel that the heart was in the center of the body, in the belly, the gut. And And at times they thought it was in the womb. At other times, way, way back, centuries ago, thought it was in the stomach. And then finally, realized the heart was up here. So started putting it in the heart, the feelings and things in the heart. But the soul then, later by the 15th or 16th century, the soul was deemed as the intellect with the will. That's what comprises the soul. So it's a combination, really, of mind and heart, or womb. And I like the idea of the womb and the life and the action aspect, and the mind and the intellect and will with the thought. Because thought and action, thought and life, our minds and our bodies together is what can create something great and wonderful in God's will, or something successful seeming, but of our own doing, and manipulating circumstances in order to succeed, which has then the sickness in it, which can seem very evil at times. But we have to remember they're sick people. It might not be mental illness. Still, they're sick. And they can become criminally sick. So this one situation, it's not over yet. I mean, the person isn't going to, just by logic, they don't go on forever with success, at least not in the same way. Well, have to find some other way to finagle, to feel like they are a success and the best and the most important, the prima donna. And it can be in any career. It can even be in a home situation, a family situation, with a mother or a father in that position, or even a teenager that's developing into that. And the parents don't recognize it. I thought of that with my former husband. Why didn't his parents? I thought maybe they tried to stop his lying. Probably caught him in lies and would, make him admit that it was a lie or whatever. Maybe he wouldn't admit it. And they didn't want to fight with him. Evidently, he had knocked his dad out when he was a junior in high school. His dad was a short little guy and had a temper. But his son controlled then, probably from then on. So I didn't know till later these things. And the dad and the mother, maybe their relationship environment triggered some of these things. Or some kind of insecurity in my former husband as a kid. Or somebody said something to him, maybe. And so he was making up for that, going to show them, going to be successful, going to be better. But he didn't have it in him to be a super, super great superstar at all. And that's fine. We don't all have to be. That's the hope. We need to adapt. And it's not about winning at all costs or being great at all costs. It's doing our best for God and in God, in His will. Doing the best with what we've got. That's the challenge. And that's it's a wonderful challenge. To do with what we've been given. And not try to cheat or to, not cheat, but to manipulate and to scheme and to figure out ways to, get rid of people that are in our way or that we perceive or who did something that angered us, so we're going to do them in to reduce them. Like my husband saying, he vowed he was going to destroy me, and he would spend the rest of his life doing it. I think he's kind of given up by now because, not a whole lot more to be done to me. I'm not no threat to anybody whatsoever, and never was, but he didn't see it that way. He became very threatened by me as it all unfolded, and I went to therapy and got help figuring it all out. So, but I didn't know about these things. Personality disorders. It is my neighbor calling. So, we educate yourself on personality disorders. DSM-3R, or maybe DSM-5 now. Read up on personality disorders. God bless you all.